spring of water welling up to eternal life. Something that just really piqued her interest, where she asked how to obtain this. And we all understand that when he comes to that next statement, Jesus says, let's go through the channels. Let's ask your husband. It's coming to a point that she has to realize that if she's striving for this water, if she wants to thirst for this, and we'll talk about sacrifice later, she's going to have to give up some things. She's going to have to, if she has this desire for this water that she'll never be thirsty for again, she's going to be willing to disregard these things of the world to obtain it. And we talked about that in our Bible study today. And you see that usually when we have a problem, we don't look to God for that answer. We only look to God when it's convenient for us. We don't really look to God when it's inconvenient for us. We don't look to God when things are good. We don't look to God when there's no need to have God. And we talked about how the society today is so self-reliant. It's not shocking to us that some will make the argument that they don't need God even now. And that really does sound like the people that we read about in the prophecies, especially in the major prophets, where they thought they was very self-sufficient and they have great clothes and great places, and because of these great things, they don't really need God to help them out until God takes it away. And that's why you see that we must have this continuous thirst for this. If you're looking for why you feel so empty, man, I encourage you to look for God. I think I told you this story a couple weeks ago where I had this young man that was going through a very difficult struggle in his life. And the first thing he asked me when he's going through his struggle is, where's God when I need him the most? I'm going through this challenge with my family. I'm going through this challenge with my wife, with my job. I'm going through this challenge with our home. And I'm going through all these difficulties. And he says, I don't know where God is at this time. And the first question I asked him is, don't blame God, first off, that these bad things happen in your life. That's why sin came into this world. That's why we have problems, because sin came into this world. Secondly, too, if you really want God for your help, do you ever think that he wants you as well? And he may not need the things that you have, but he desires to have you. He wants to be a part of your life. And many times, as I've talked about the prophets, God has always kind of had his hand reaching out there just for you to grasp. And for one reason or another, many people in this world today don't grasp that hand. And they're the same individuals that ask themselves, why does my life feel so empty? Why does my life feel that it has no purpose? Why can I not be satisfied with the things of this world? And it's because you're not reaching your hand out to God. That's why we see there in verse 6 of chapter 5 in Matthew that there's going to be individuals that hunger and thirst for righteousness, and those individuals will be satisfied. Another thing, too, is a desire to yearn for him. You understand, you probably think I'm mad right now. It's because of just a little bit sunburn right here. And we're out in the field yesterday, and it's funny that 6 days ago, we had snow on the ground. And yesterday, it was 70-some degrees. It was nice yesterday, and I guess it's supposed to be even warmer today. But we all understand that if we're out in the heat long enough, we're going to want to get something to drink afterwards. And we understand that if we don't drink, if we don't try to drink, you understand that you could die from that. And you could cause some significant health problems from that too. And the average individual, from what I've found in certain studies, can last a couple weeks without food. But when it comes to water, you can only last a couple days. And the thing is that should be the mentality when it comes to you and I when we want God to be around. It's not, I just want him around on Sunday. I want him around every day. I want him to be with me every day. I want to have the opportunity to learn of him every day. I want to have the opportunity to study him every day, to read his word, to have him in every decision that I make. Ask yourself this. When it comes to the decisions you make for your life, is God a significant part of it? When you decided to get married, did God become a primary factor in it? When it comes to having children, Does God have a primary factor in it? Do you teach your children or do you teach your grandchildren when they leave home that you want them to have God as a primary factor in their life? When you go and have a job, and many times we don't really do this, but do we make God a factor in it? Do we get disgruntled? I'm going a little bit off here, but do we get disgruntled every time we go to a job and we tell them that I need to have a Sunday off because I want to go worship, or I wanted that morning off so I could go worship him, and they tell you, well, we don't want someone like you? And do you just get to the point that if it's the ideal money, it's the ideal pay, it's the ideal this or that, we say to ourselves, well, you know what? I'm just going to sacrifice. And it's a very dangerous thing to sacrifice our spiritual well-being. And the thing is that, not too long ago, let me get a little bit personal here. Not too long ago, it's been about 8 years, I got fired from a job. Now, I want you to think about something. That is probably one of the most down low, embarrassing things that can ever happen to a preacher, to lose a secular job. We can make an argument that, people don't like us when it comes to being a preacher. But to lose a secular job, that's embarrassing. And brethren, it all came down to one thing. I was miserable. I was miserable in my job. I wasn't happy every time I come to work. I'll tell you how bad it got. I would drive through Marietta. In Marietta, there was always this one light. Nobody was there, but it was always red. And I had to seem like wait forever for that to turn green. And it got to a point that I just got so frustrated. Brett, I'm telling you this because that's how bad it can get. Where something that's not really that significant, if I just wait a minute, it'll change. But the thing is, when we don't let God be a factor in these things, it could let the insignificant things of this world really get to us if we're not careful. Jeremiah tells us, verses 11 through 13, this goes on to my little firing job thing. It says, I have plans for you. And I have plans for your welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. And they will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. One of the things I learned after I lost this job was I think my priorities are not straight. So I took some time. Not to try to look for another job. I had opportunities to get hired probably a lot sooner. But I just looked for an opportunity to find myself back with God because I wasn't. And then after a while, everything got back into place. I truly believe I wouldn't be here right now if I had just stayed at that job. Brethren, when we need to look for God, if we're yearning to have God in our lives, finding him is easy. The question you have to ask yourself is, how diligent are you willing to take on a challenge to find him? And that goes to my next point. Are you going to be ready to sacrifice? Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 will tell us, it says, I appeal before you, brothers, and some translations will say, I am begging you, I am trying to encourage you. You must understand that there is things that you need to do to be this living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your spiritual worship. King James and New King James will tell you this is your acceptable worship. Paul was making his plea that when it comes to being a sacrifice, he goes on to verse 2 and tells us that it can't be a sacrifice conformed to this world. You need to have this transformation. You must understand that the difficulties that lie ahead are not from God, but are things of this world. And ask yourself, are you going to change? Are you going to make that turn? And have this renewing of your mind. And do the things of God which is good and acceptable. And brethren, we must be willing to make sacrifices. We must have the courage and willingness to go through life's difficulty, and not just. And those challenges will come when it comes to trying to get this water. You think about this. Those deers will go across roads that people are going from anywhere from 55 to 75, maybe even more miles an hour. And they're willing to come right when you're ready to come across them. Wednesday, I went to go preach at Merrill's Ridge, and one went this way right in front of me, and then another one went this way. And that's not the only perils they deal with. They got to deal with hunters. They got to deal with bears and wolves and coyotes. They got to deal with all kinds of things, but it's worth it to get to this water. And they're willing to risk their lives to obtain this. But they need it. Ask yourself, brethren, when it comes to the spiritual things, are you willing to go to that point? Are you willing to go to the extreme that you're willing to go through these perils in order to obtain this? Now, I know a lot of people don't know who this is, because if you didn't live in the 80s, then you probably don't know who this is, but this is Lisa Wachtel. Eric, do you know who this is? I was hoping you'd help me out. Terry, do you know who this is? Yes. Facts of Life? Okay, thank you. The reason being I put her up here is very interesting about how she is now. She got into Hollywood, or she's decided to take this commitment to Christ at the age of 10. Pretty young. But then she got this opportunity to be on this TV show called The Facts of Life. And what's the interesting thing about her is she wasn't willing to bend to Hollywood, because one of the things that they wanted her to do was to give up her virginity in one of the shows. And she said no, because she didn't want her character to be something that compromised her value to do this thing that they wanted to do in Hollywood. And after the show was over, she's never to be heard again until about 20 years later. And the reason being was because not only she wanted to have a family, but she wanted to be dedicated to Christ, and she wanted to have her family dedicated to Christ. She put more value in that than these things of Hollywood. And the interesting thing is, all these individuals who were on that show, they never went very far. They went about as far as she did. And the thing that's kind of crazy about this situation is she said to herself, this is not worth it. And some people say, well, you know, if I had this job, it's worth it. If I have this acting gig, it's worth it. If I have this musician opportunity, it's worth it. If I have this, one young man I can remember, he thought that he saw this couple, this beautiful couple of a handsome man and a beautiful woman. He looked at that because they were Christians at the time. He goes, that's worth having. Not because they were Christians, it was worth having because they were an attractive couple. And he said, I'd be willing to give up anything for that. And I thought, that's a very dangerous mindset to have, to think this is what achievement in life is. And here's the sad thing. That couple, they're no longer together. She left them for somebody else. But this idea, sometimes this mindset to say, this is what we need. Brethren, why do we think that we need these things if we don't have God as a part of it? We're focused on the things of this world. But brethren, let me tell you, just like we look here at our study in Matthew chapter 18, those things that we think that are also important, Jesus reminds us when it comes to the kingdom of heaven, those things are not that important. The kingdom of heaven is. That's the great gift. That is the great thing. That is what is greatest among us, is this kingdom of heaven, not the things pertaining to the things of the world. Look here in Isaiah chapter 46, verses 3 through 5. Sometimes we forget that our blessings come from God. Starting in verse 3, it says, listen to me, O house of Jacob, all the remnant of the house of Israel, who have been born by me from before your birth, carried from the womb. Even to your old age I am he, and to gray hairs I will carry you. I have made, and I will bear, and I will carry, and I will save. And it says, to whom will you liken me and make me equal? You ever look at how, when it comes to a parent, when it comes to their child, we go to the extreme to where we think our child does no wrong. I've been guilty of it. To think Peyton would not do anything wrong, or Shay, or Carter. But we do go this because we know our child. And what are we willing to do for that child? And we will do our part wherever they can to keep our child's life from falling apart. And if you're that kind of parent, kudos to you. But I want you to think about something. The thing when it comes to God and his children, God sees the best in you too. The thing about when it comes to God and his children is, if you look at Isaiah, he says, even this opportunity, I look at you and I want to make sure you get the best what you need. And the tragedy is, once again, we think that the world will give us this. Many times, as I've said in previous statements, you look at Isaiah and God says, I'm here for you. You may be a child that is going through some very difficult things, or you're doing some very foolish things, but I am still here for you. You look at Isaiah and how he describes how his children was this great thing at one time. Everybody thought this was the ideal child to have, and now that child has grown up and has done some really dumb things. And now every nation around Jerusalem, every nation around Judah is pointing and laughing at them. God says, I still want you. We will do anything for our kids. God has that same mentality as you do. He's trying to make sure he's there when your life is falling apart. I don't know if I told you guys this, but I told you a story about going to go see the individual at the hospital that passed away. And I still reach out to his daughter. I don't know what her status is in life, but I keep telling her, I said, if you need to get out of this, because it seems like she's just in a miserable state. I said, if you need to get out of this, if you need to get out of Tyler County, and I told her, I said, some people can live in Tyler County and be content, and more power to them. I said, I just wasn't one of them. I said, that could be you too. I said, if you ever get to the point that you just don't want to be here anymore, you let me know, and we'll come and get you. I'm still waiting for that call. And it's because I do believe she needs someone. Because her mom's gone. Her dad's gone. She had a boyfriend at the time when her dad passed away, and they broke up. I just feel like she's alone. I just let her know. I said, I know you don't know me that well. I said, but if you need something, I'm right here. That's God. And the sad thing is, we don't call on him. We think, once again, we think that we find something in this world that will sustain this. We think ourselves will be able to sustain this. No, you won't. Reach out to God. Finally, we need God to survive. Why does the deer need to drink water? And it's because it's instrumental for survival. If the deer can't survive without water, we also can't survive without God. Once again, it goes back to the statement I made about some people think that because they have good health, or they have good wealth, or they're alive, therefore they don't need God. But look how tragic it is that I don't think people realize that no matter if you're rich or poor, no matter if you're sick or healthy, or no matter if you have a lot or you have very little, that they all have problems. It just may not be as well broadcasted as some. And maybe we find out how bad those problems are when it's inevitably too late. I had a friend of mine from Tyler County reach out to a lot of our class of 91 and told us they made funeral arrangements for a friend of ours. And I can remember very well the day when I was there when I came to find out they took his own life. And the question that comes through all of us when we heard about this is, why? Because all of us, even some of us that wasn't in class, can remember the last time they had interaction with them. I remember my interaction. I was still at Lowe's. And there he is coming across my register. And I just said, hey, let's stop and talk for a little bit. It'll be okay. And it just seemed like there was not a care in the world. He flew. He was a pilot. He went to some places I don't think I'll ever go to. I just don't understand. Maybe you've been down that road with some of your friends. And we say to ourselves, how does someone get to this point? And do not realize that they have been at this point. Why is it, brethren, that suicide rates are at an all-time high now? And not just men in particular, but there's an increase in women as well. And you don't have to go through very difficult things such as war to go through post-traumatic stress disorder. Could it be that the reason we see these struggles in our society today is because we are further and further away from God now than we have ever been? And if you don't think that's true, then just look at the times. Some of the stuff that we have to deal with today, we never dealt with 40 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 20 years ago for that matter. I encourage you, as that song sings, as that psalm we read, as a deer pants for water, how long do you long for our God? We have an opportunity right now to take this moment, to say this is our new starting point. This is our new way to strive for that kingdom, to long to be with God. Not just when the time comes when your day is to be called to go to be called before God, not for the second coming, but no, I need him right now. I need him every day. May I encourage you, what are you doing right now to long for him? And if you're not, what can we do here this morning to help you with this? Many times, we open up the baptistry, and we just tell anybody who wants to be baptized into Christ, it's available for you. Water is prepared, garments are here, people are here to baptize you. If you want somebody different than me, that's fine. But your soul's worth it. And understand that's salvation. Peter tells us this. We also understand that we can't go with baptism without repentance as well. Acts chapter 2, verse 38 tells us, repent and be baptized, every one of you. For remission of sins, you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. That was prophecy back in the book of Hosea. And it's come to be, that was back in the prophecy of Joel. It was fulfilled in Acts chapter 2. That's available for you here today as well. Maybe we need to pray about something. I've come to find out that my son Peyton, he offers prayer now when he does an invitation. And it's just because it's something that is so easy to call upon the Lord with. And how wonderful is it that we have this opportunity as we come together to worship him, that we can take this moment to pray to him and cast our every care upon him. Remember, we were told this because he loves us. That is available for you here as well. So if you need to respond, may I encourage you to do so now while we stand, while we sing.